Hello mind mappers and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be going over Lead the Field by someone who needs no introduction, Earl Nightingale. This book is a ton of timeless wisdom, all about how you can be the best possible version of yourself. Without any further introduction, let's get directly into the introduction, where I've pulled out a quote that I believe will give us a good overview of what we can expect to learn today. This is Earl Nightingale with the new edition of Lead the Field. This program is about 12 ideas that will bring order and success into our lives. These ideas will work wonders regardless of what we choose as the main thrust of our lives. For these are the great ideas that have evolved over the centuries, and together they form a constellation by which you and I can safely and successfully navigate. Success or failure as a human being is not a matter of luck or circumstance or fate or of breaks or who you know or any of the other tiresome old myths and cliches by which the ignorant tend to excuse themselves. It's a matter of following a common sense paradigm of rules, guidelines that anyone can follow. So this is why I really love Earl's work, is because essentially what he's done is distilled some of the most timeless wisdom. It's coming from all sorts of different areas that Earl has researched, and he brings it forth so that we can actually implement it in our own lives. And he kind of brings some of these old teachings and puts them into a way that makes sense for us today. So the first question that I wanted to talk about here from the introduction is, what actually leads to success? Well, it's often not what we think or what we're taught to think. It's not luck, circumstance, fate, or who we know. Those, of course, are contributors for sure, but they're also not entirely in our control. We can't control our own luck. We can't control our circumstances a lot of the time. Of course, we can't control fate, and who we know is generally not up to us. This book is all about how to lead the field, and to do that, we're going to need to focus on what is inside of our control. The 12 ideas in this book focus in on what we can control and how we can optimize ourselves and optimize our lives. And to me, this is just a book full of wisdom. Certainly there's 12 different ideas in the book, but the ones that I've pulled out are the ones that really stand the test of time to me. They come up again and again in all the books that we're reading, and the process here is just to help you implement those ideas. Earl is an amazing synthesizer of information, putting it into actionable rules for us to follow in our everyday life, which I think is very important. You need to make it simple if you're going to be able to follow it. Whatever field you're trying to lead, this book is for you. I've taken my favorite ideas from the book and we're going to explore them in more in depth and work through the action items together so that you can leave with some actionable takeaways. Before we get into the big ideas that I pulled out, let's talk a little bit about mind mapping. You can get the most out of these mind maps by following along. You can find the process of how I mind map, plus all 50 plus mind map templates, including this one, at the link down below. That's themindmapguy.com. Following along will help you learn more, remember better, and apply these books to your life. And if you want to skip ahead and get my summary of topics like goal setting, habits, purpose, learning, I've read dozens and dozens of books on these topics. They're all available for free on the channel. But if you want to skip the line and see what my big ideas for each of those topics are, you can find those in the masterclasses on themindmapguy.com. Dozens and dozens of books worth of wisdom distilled into one 2-hour long masterclass. Our first big idea here from Earl is called diamonds. Needless to say, the farm the first farmer had sold so that he might find a diamond mine turned out to be the most productive diamond mine in the entire African continent. Of course, this is a story that we've all heard before. The first farmer had owned free and clear acres of diamonds, but had sold them for practically nothing in order to look for them elsewhere. Well, the moral is clear. If the first farmer had only taken the time to study and prepare himself to learn what diamonds looked like in their rough state, and since he had already owned a piece of the African continent, to thoroughly explore the property he had before looking elsewhere, all of his wildest dreams would have come true. Now, the thing about this story, and why it so profoundly affected Dr. Conwell, and subsequently millions of others, was the idea that each of us is at this moment standing in the middle of his or her own acres of diamonds. If we'll only have the wisdom and patience to intelligently and effectively explore the work in which we're now engaged, to explore ourselves, we'll usually find the richest receipt, whether they be financial or intangible, or both. Before we go running off to think that we're greener on the other side or run off to what we think are greener pastures, let's make sure that our own is not just as green and perhaps even greener. Again, if you've heard this story before, I totally understand. It's a very common story through personal development, but I think it bears repeating. This, of course, is the very popular story told in a lot of different books and courses. The Too Long Didn't Read is an old farmer sells land in order to buy another plot looking for diamonds. Little did he know that he was standing on his own acres of diamonds and sold it for essentially pennies on the dollar. Moral of the story here is don't look elsewhere for diamonds before you've started to search your own backyard. And why do I think that this is such a popular story? I believe it's because this is a common part of the human experience. Everyone has had the feeling of hindsight, where if we just stuck with something a little longer, we would have been successful. That's a tough thing to reconcile. It's painful. It's a painful experience. It's a useful one as well. Knowing that hindsight is 20/20 and that you may be standing on a field of diamonds right now, how should we act? A quick aside here, something that I didn't include in the mind map, but a mentor of mine once told me that the idea fairy visits us when we have the winning idea. So essentially what happens is we have this winning idea. We have a business idea. We have an idea for a goal that we're trying to accomplish. And what happens is we get visited by the idea fairy, where a new business idea comes up or a new way to go about doing business comes up. And instead of sticking to the one that we originally had, we follow the idea fairy from idea to idea to idea. And this is essentially the same story of acres of diamonds. We have to be very careful not to follow the idea fairy because often the idea that we currently have is the one that's most likely to be successful. So a few words here on forethought and understanding. It's what I believe this story is really all about. Some great questioning exercises that we can use when we're thinking about moving on from our current acreage that potentially could have diamonds onto a new acreage or a new quest to look for diamonds. One question is, what diamonds might I already be sitting on? What skills do I have? What plans do I have? What investments have I already made that could bear fruit eventually? Number two is, again, what investments have I made that are yet to pay off but might if I just shifted my perspective? Number three is, what opportunities do I have that others don't? What kind of skills do I have? Again, what people do I know? That sort of thing. Number four is, what skills, abilities, or insider knowledge have I gained from my previous actions, and how can I leverage that in a way that I'm not currently? Those are all good if you believe that you might be sitting on acres of diamonds. If you have an idea, a business, something that you're working on that you're just not sure if it's going to come to fruition or not, maybe you're being visited by the idea fairy that I spoke about before, those are good questions to ask yourself to make sure that you're not moving on before you actually bear the fruit of your previous labors. Our next big idea here is destination. And if you should visit a ship in port and ask the captain for his next port of call, he'll tell you in a single sentence. This is something that we've been talking about quite a lot on the channel as of recently, is knowing your purpose, knowing your goal, and being able to reiterate it in a single sentence or two. Even though the captain cannot see his port, his destination, for a full 99% of the voyage, he knows it's there. And barring an unforeseeable and highly unlikely catastrophe, he'll reach it. All he has to do is keep doing certain things every single day. If someone asked you for your next port of call, your goal, could you tell them? Is your goal clear and concise in your mind, and do you have it written down? If not, it's a good idea. We need reminding and reinforcement. If you can get a picture of your goal and stick it to your bathroom mirror, it's an excellent idea to do so. Thousands of successful people carry their goals written on a card in their wallets or purses. And what I took from this was that a good captain always knows his destination. Imagine if you were going on a cruise and you didn't know where it would end. How would you even know if you were lost? How would you know how much fuel you needed or how long it might take to get there? All these things that we rely on in everyday life. Of course, you wouldn't get on a cruise that you didn't know the destination. You would first chart the course. Another benefit of knowing your destination, of course, is charting the course. If you know that you're going to a particular port, likely you're not going to take the route that takes you directly through the Bermuda Triangle. Likely you're not going to go through pirate-infested waters. Because if you know your intended outcome, you can avoid the pitfalls that other people have been through before you. So the idea here is that successful people have specific destinations for multiple reasons. Not only that, but they remind themselves of that destination very often. They don't set it and forget it. As Earl says here, thousands of successful people carry their goals written on a card in their wallets or purses. I personally have it as the background of my computer screen. How about you? Do you have a specific destination? If not, now's a great time. If you're following along with the mind map, let's set one. What's your number one most important goal right now? I really love The One Thing. This is such a great book. I recommend that you go and check it out. The One Thing by Gary Keller. It's available on the channel. What's the one thing such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? What's your one most important goal right now? Write down that goal in one sentence. Carry it around in your wallet and remind yourself and reinforce it often. That's the trick to knowing where you're going, charting the course, and actually being sure that you're going to get there. Our next big idea is scales. I like to think of this law in the form of a giant apothecary scale, the kind with a cross on it from which you hang two bowls on chains. Now, one of the bowls is marked as rewards, the other is marked as service. Whatever we put into the bowl marked as service, the world will match in the bowl marked as rewards. How we think, work, talk, and conduct ourselves is what we have to put in the bowl marked as service. And the extent and nature of our service will determine our rewards. If any person alive is discontented with his rewards, he needs to examine his service. Action, reaction. As you sow, so shall you reap. What you put out will determine what you must get back in return. So simple, so basic, so true, and so misunderstood. So the idea here is really just that rewards come in direct proportion to your level of service. The more service and value you're able to put out in the world, the more you will be rewarded. And I think most of us know inherently that this is true. It's a pretty simple concept, and the scale is a great way to think about it. However, I would just add in here, there is sometimes a delay, and it can be fairly long. Some entrepreneurs spend years or decades piling into the service side of the scale without much reward. But eventually, the idea here is that it all balances out given enough time. And if any person alive is discontented with his rewards, he needs to examine his level of service. We often, in my opinion, focus too much on rewards. This is like outcome-based thinking, something that we've talked quite a lot about on the channel. For example, rethinking positive thinking. We're focusing so much on the outcome that we don't have the actual motivation to action what we need to action in the moment. It's not necessarily bad to focus on some degree of outcome. After all, as we spoke about before, we need a destination. But if that's all you focus on, you're likely to get very lost. I think set a destination and then focus on piling as much service into the scale as possible is a good, simple two-step process. So what are the rewards? It's an interesting question. For most people, they'll think of gold coins or money, right? When I originally read this, I thought, okay, it's an apothecary scale. I've got service, which is YouTube videos, coaching, all sorts of different things that I do in my marketing business. And then on the other side is gold coins, is money, is the amount of money that I get in my bank account. But then I thought a little deeper, and that's not actually all the rewards that you could get. For sure, most people will think about gold coins or money, but rewards, just like service, looks like many different things. Often it relates to the type of service that you're outputting. Now, here are some examples. You might get relationship as a reward to certain service to certain people. You might get social capital. You might get money, as we spoke about already. You also might get knowledge, trust, or peace. There's multiple different ways to measure your rewards, and I think not only too much are we focused on rewards in general, but we're also focused too much on money as the only reward, where relationship, social capital, knowledge, trust, those are all equally valuable, but we're taught so much to focus specifically on the money. A lot of times, the more relationship, social capital, knowledge, and trust you have, the easier the money comes. But if you focus just on money, it doesn't necessarily mean that the other rewards are going to follow. Another great question is, how can you be of service, or how can I be of service? Here's an invitation. I've had many coaching clients do it, and they've said it eventually transformed their lives. Look at all the areas of your life, and how can you be of service in them? And I don't want you to think just at work. If I'm at work, I can work a little harder, work a little later, I can solve problems. Definitely, those are all really good ones. But how about inside my relationship? Can I make my significant other a coffee or a tea in the morning and ask them how their day was at night? That type of service is going to pay off just as service at work or in business is going to pay off in reward. You can continue to think about your life as service to reward. So if you're having a hard time in some of your relationships, level up your level of service to those people, and quite often the relationships will work themselves out. That's true for every area of your life. Fitness, health, tons of different areas. Financial for sure, but don't forget about the other areas of your life. The scales are weighing your level of service. Now let's talk about each other. The next big idea here is that never before in history has human beings been so interdependent, right? Not dependent, but interdependent. It's as impossible to live without serving others as it would be to live if others were not constantly serving us. And this is good. The more closely knit this interdependence becomes, the greater will human achievement. We need each other, and we literally cannot live without one another. Every time we strike a match, drink a glass of water, turn on the lights, pick up the phone, drive our car, put on our clothes, take a bath, mow the lawn, go fishing, we're being served by a great industry and by the efforts of thousands of other human beings. And I had never really thought about this before, but the level of gratitude that we have for others is not high enough. I mean, often we don't stop to think just how much we rely on our other human beings. Especially in the days of the internet, it can often feel like we're wholly disconnected from others and we're in this alone. If I order a new computer, if I order a desk, if I order a new microphone from one of the big companies out there, it can sometimes feel like it just shows up at my door and it was me that did that. But that's simply not the case. Think about the room that we're in right now. I mean, just the chair that you're sitting on probably was touched by dozens of humans before getting to you. Someone planted the tree to make the chair 100 years ago. Someone cut down the tree to put it on a truck and took it to the processing plant. Someone chose the exact right piece of wood from a slab that created a chair. Someone marketed it and sold the chair to you or whoever bought it, and then someone figured out how to deliver that chair to where you are right now. Now, those are just 5 pieces, and it could potentially be dozens and dozens of people that have touched that chair. Now, also, another good thought experiment is to take the smallest possible thing in your life. Recently, I watched a YouTube video and it said, let's take a pencil. No one person in the world knows how to make a pencil. And that sounds crazy, right? A pencil is a very simple utensil. But the truth is, too much goes into making a pencil. Everyone needs to have a specialty and cooperate. You need to have someone that can make the wood. You need to have someone that can find the graphite and the eraser and the little metal thing that holds the eraser on. It just ends up being too much. And that's all before the pencil even gets to you, which you need someone that's an expert in logistics. The whole idea here is that everything we own is a culmination of not only an amazing amount of human intelligence, but also a lot of cooperation. First, let's have some deep gratitude for that. Thank you to our other human beings. But second, what are you trying to do on your own right now? And would some cooperation help? So, for example, I see a lot of people trying to start businesses all by themselves, which, of course, I've started multiple businesses all by myself, or at least that's what it looks like on the outside. But I actually have a team of people. I have people that are willing to build websites, do graphic design, all sorts of things that need to be done. And my specialty is not necessarily any one of those disciplines, but the ability to bring those people together to create something that is essentially just an idea in my head and put it out there into the real world. That's a true skill. That's a leadership, and that's bringing people together to cooperate. Our next big idea here is about superpowers. What are your powers? This is a good question. I love superhero analogies. One book that I really just love is The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman, all about creating kind of this alter ego for yourself, and I love that. But here, Earl says, what are your powers? There's something, probably several things, that you can do especially well, that you most enjoy doing, and which will automatically provide the greatest service to others. This right here, in and of itself, is a very deep sentiment. The thing that you love to do, the thing that you enjoy doing the most, provides the greatest service to others. So, of course, hard work is very important. Of course, all the efficiency is very important. But doing something that you enjoy, doing the most, that automatically allows you and puts you in the best position to provide the greatest service to others. Are you ready to discover, through experimentation and reflection, what course of life will fulfill those powers most completely? Now, that's being true to yourself. That's integrity, and that's reasonableness. What can you do especially well? Everyone has something, even if it's yet to be discovered. Often, these are elusive to us. We can't even see what we're really good at or what our unique gift could be. One really good thing that I've been asking coaching clients to do recently is that you can ask others. It's a really great exercise. Ask the people around you what they think that you're uniquely good at. 5 years ago, to tell a story from my own life, I asked a friend what they thought I would be uniquely good at. And they said they thought I would be a great motivational speaker. This is back when I owned my gym in my small town. Now, they don't even really know this, but that struck a chord in me. It's something that I couldn't get out of my head. I've always loved helping other people, but a speaker? No way. I was afraid to be a speaker. Here I am, 5 years later, spending literally all my free time basically speaking to you and trying to help you. Very, very important. That person could see something in me that I either couldn't see or wasn't willing to see. So other people are very good at seeing what our superpowers are. Keep a journal. What are the successes that you've had recently? This is something that I'm taking from Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker, available on this channel, as is The Alter Ego Effect that we talked about before. But keep a journal. What successes have you had recently? Let's say in the past 6 months. What led to those successes? What were the strengths? What kind of, were you able to plan really well? Did you work really hard? Was it just something that you straight loved? What led to the successes in the past 6 months? These can lead to deep insights into what you are truly good at. For example, you might have had a big success with a team that you're working on, but you weren't necessarily the most technical person on the team. But you brought people together. You made people see how working together was a lot easier than actually working separately. Maybe you're on a team of a bunch of different technical people that have a hard time kind of interfacing with each other, and you were able to better communicate with those people. That's a very effective superpower, but it's not one that would be easy to see if you didn't look back and reflect on it. Our final point is probably the best point, and one that we've been talking about a lot on this channel as of recently. A goal sometimes seems so far off, and our progress often appears to be so painfully slow that we have a tendency to lose heart. It sometimes seems we'll never make the grade, and we come close to failing, falling back into old habits, which, while they may be comfortable, now they lead to nowhere. Well, there's a way to beat this. It's been used successfully by many people, many of the world's most successful people, and it's been advocated by many of the greatest thinkers. It's to live successfully just one day at a time. A lifetime is comprised of just days strung together into weeks, months, and then into years. Let's reduce it to the lowest common denominator, a single day, and then still further into each task of that day. A successful life is nothing more than a lot of successful days put together. It's going to take so many days to reach your goal. If this goal is to be reached in a minimum of time, every day must count. Now think of a single day as a building block with which you're building the tower of your life. Just as a stonemason can only put one stone in a place at a time, you can only live one day at a time. And it's the way in which these stones are placed which will determine the beauty, the strength of your tower. If each stone is successfully placed, the tower will be a success. If, on the other hand, you put down in a hit or miss fashion, the whole tower is in danger. Now, this may seem a rather elementary way of looking at it, but if you want to make it clear, and it's good and a logical way of looking at human life. So, if you want to know what your life is going to look like, look at your day. The habits you have today and tomorrow, eventually those add up to be your life. If you're unhappy, bored, or unsatisfied with your days, eventually you're going to feel the same way about your life. And to be honest, that can be a little terrifying, right? Especially because most of us feel like we're living in a Groundhog Day. We wake up, we work, we eat, and we repeat. It's a pretty boring and unfulfilling life. But here's the deal. It's also very empowering. And why? Why is it so empowering? Because if you make one small 1% change to your day, it has a huge compounded return in your life. If you start waking up 10 minutes earlier to read books every single day, that adds up to hours and hours and hours by the end of your life. If you're nicer to just one person in your life, that changes their entire life over the course of many, many years. Let's try this. What are you unhappy with in your life right now? What are you unhappy with just in this single day? So for example, you get home from work and you tend to watch too much Netflix. Let's look at that. How can I make a 1% improvement? 1% improvement in that kind of Netflix activity that you're doing, right? What's 1% better watching Netflix? Maybe it's just watching a different show on Netflix, or maybe it's watching a little bit less, whatever it might be, right? What is a 1% improvement that you could implement and put into a habit so that every single day your life is progressively getting better and better and better, and eventually it leads to exponential growth? Step number 3 is to watch my book review on habit books and implement the principles into your life. If you want to change your life, you have to change your habits. We all know this. Some great books on that are Atomic Habits, Tiny Habits, The Power of Habit, and Mini Habits. Of course, there's also my Habits Masterclass. I recommend that you spend the time to research habits because making a small change in your single day ends up making a large change in your single life. I want to thank you for being with me here today. This was Lead the Field by Earl Nightingale. If you want to skip the line and get some of my best insights from the dozens and dozens of books that I read on topics like habits, on topics like purpose, goal setting, and learning, you can get those all at themindmapguy.com in the masterclasses. I hope to see you there, and I hope to see you in the next video.